The storm hit the cliff without warning. Rain sliced through the air like sharp knives, and lightning split the sky, revealing a shadow so massive it seemed impossible. On the jagged edge of the precipice, a dragon lay trapped, its great wings folded tight against a body scarred by time. Every breath it drew rattled the rocks beneath it. Chains of glowing energy wrapped its legs and neck, binding it in place, humming with a strange pulse that seemed alive. Elias Thorne gritted his teeth against the wind. He'd climbed higher than anyone dared, but nothing prepared him for the sight before him. The dragon's eyes met his, amber, intelligent, and desperate. Something in that gaze pierced through him, a silent plea he didn't understand but couldn't ignore. Without thinking, he lunged forward, one hand clutching a wet rock, the other reaching for the dragon's claw. The cliff trembled. A shard of jagged stone broke free and skidded toward the abyss below. Elias's foot slipped. For a heartbeat he thought he would fall. But instinct kicked in. He grabbed the dragon's claw, his fingers digging into tough scales, and hauled himself up. Pain shot through his arms, but the dragon flinched, startled, not aggressive. It seemed almost curious. "Easy," Elias shouted over the wind. "I'm not here to hurt you." A low, vibrating hum rose from the dragon, a sound that went through his chest, a strange alien rhythm that made the hairs on his neck stand up. It was not a roar or a growl. It was something else, something that carried memory, warning, and sadness all at once. Elias pressed his forehead to the dragon's claw, feeling the warmth of life beneath the chains. Lightning struck again, closer this time. The cliff shook violently, and the chains binding the dragon flickered, their energy pulsing faster. Elias realized the chains weren't ordinary. They weren't metal. They weren't even natural. They were some kind of alien energy old beyond comprehension, holding a creature that had not moved freely in thousands of years. His heart pounded. Could he free it? Should he even try? Then a loud crack echoed. A piece of the cliff's edge gave way under the dragon's weight. The beast roared, not in anger but in panic, and its wings flexed instinctively. Even bound, they spanned wider than Elias's climbing rope could measure. The sound of wind whipping against those massive wings created a deafening roar that nearly pushed him off his feet. He grabbed a loose vine, wrapping it around his wrist, bracing against the pull. Elias's mind raced. He had no tools, no weapons, nothing but courage and a belief that this dragon, this alien titan, deserved a chance. Slowly, carefully, he edged closer to the chain source, a glowing crystal embedded in the cliff. The closer he got, the more he felt a strange resonance, a pull as if the dragon itself wanted him to touch it. Every muscle in his body screamed to stop, but he couldn't. He had to understand. He had to try. Rain stung his eyes, but he could see the subtle shifts in the crystal, tiny sparks dancing along cracks in the cliff face. The dragon hissed, leaning into him in an almost human way as if warning him not to falter. Elias swallowed hard. The wind howled like a living thing, threatening to tear him off the cliff, but he planted his feet and pressed his hand against the crystal. A shock of energy shot up his arm and his vision blurred. The dragon thrashed violently, its chains glowing brighter, almost screaming with light. Elias barely held on. Then suddenly the energy dimmed. The chains pulsed slowly, less aggressively. The dragon's wings twitched, tiny movements at first, but enough to make Elias's heart leap. "Come on," he whispered. "Just a little more." A crack of lightning lit the sky directly behind them. Elias shielded his eyes and looked up. For the first time he saw the full span of the dragon's wings, folded but magnificent, scarred but powerful. He felt the weight of history in that moment. A creature grounded for 3,000 years finally responding to a human touch. The cliff groaned. The storm raged. The dragon's hum grew louder, almost like a heartbeat, syncing with his own. Then a massive chunk of rock broke free above them. It fell toward the dragon, and Elias lunged, pushing against the beast's shoulder to move it just in time. The rock smashed into the cliff with a thunderous crash, sending shards flying. Elias stumbled back, catching the edge, and the dragon gave a startled roar, shaking its head violently. The wind screamed louder, and the dragon's wings lifted slightly off the cliff, just a few inches, but it was enough. Enough to show that after 3 millennia flight might not be impossible. Elias's heart pounded. He had no idea what would happen next. Could they survive the storm? Could the dragon finally take its first flight? And what had trapped it all these years? A jagged bolt of lightning struck the cliff beside them, splitting the rock and sending a cloud of dust and sparks into the air. Elias blinked through the chaos. The dragon's eyes, glowing faintly, seemed to study him, Not with fear, not with anger, but with recognition. Something ancient had awakened, and for the first time in 3,000 years, it had a human to trust. And then, with a thunderous roar that shook the cliff to its roots, the dragon flexed its wings harder, and the edge of the cliff beneath him began to crack. Elias realized, with a surge of fear and excitement, that the next move would decide everything. The cliff trembled beneath Elias's boots. The dragon's wings beat tentatively, sending gusts that nearly knocked him over. Rain stung his eyes, lightning flashed, and the storm didn't care that he was already halfway up the edge of death. But something in the dragon's gaze held him steady, a quiet intelligence, ancient and sharp, daring him to act. Then the sound came. Not thunder, not wind, but metal scraping against rock. Voices shouted through the storm, rough and urgent. Elias froze. Shadows moved across the ridge above. Mercenaries. He recognized their insignia from the last space station raid, a group that killed without thought for profit or life. They had tracked him here. And they were after the dragon. The dragon's hum turned anxious, vibrating through Elias's chest. He crouched low, scanning the cliff. If the mercenaries reached the dragon, it would be over. The chains might be broken, but they weren't gone entirely. Their glowing energy pulsed, unpredictable, and any wrong move could fry both him and the dragon. Elias's mind worked fast. He grabbed a jagged rock, throwing it to create a small landslide below the ridge. Debris tumbled down, scattering some of the mercenaries, buying precious seconds. One shouted, but the wind drowned most voices. The dragon shifted, almost instinctively leaning into Elias's movements. It was listening, learning, reacting. Elias realized the creature could follow commands, but only if he proved it trusted him. "Hold still," he shouted. "I'll handle them." He sprinted along a narrow ledge, dodging rain-slick stones, moving closer to the mercenaries. He needed to create distance, a distraction. Using his knowledge of alien tech, he picked up a shard of the glowing chains that had fallen from the dragon earlier. He slammed it into a rock crevice, causing it to vibrate violently. A pulse of light shot out, startling the attackers. Sparks struck nearby metal, causing one of their weapons to short-circuit. Elias ducked behind a boulder, heart racing. Small victories counted. Behind him, the dragon's wings twitched again, flexing under the storm's wind. Its claws dug into the cliff as it tested its strength. Elias glanced back. For the first time, it lifted its chest slightly, almost ready to push off the cliff edge. But the mercenaries were advancing faster now. One aimed a plasma rifle at the dragon's glowing eye. Elias's stomach turned. He had to act before the creature's trust shattered. He grabbed a loose vine and swung toward the dragon, landing on its broad back with a wet, thudding impact. The dragon startled, letting out a low roar, but didn't fling him off. Its eyes met his, and Elias spoke through the storm, voice barely audible. "I've got you. Don't fight it. We'll get through this." The dragon tilted its head, a shiver of recognition running along its spine. Then, in a single, sudden motion, it lifted one wing. Rain poured off the scales as it tried to push upward. Elias clung tightly. The cliff shook again, one of the mercenaries slipping on the slick rock, screaming before tumbling into the abyss. Elias's stomach lurched, but he didn't have time to think. Every second counted. A flash of insight hit him. The chains weren't just restraining the dragon, they were feeding off the storm's energy. If he could redirect that energy just right, maybe he could weaken them. He pulled a second shard from the ground, pressing it against the dragon's chest where the glowing lines of the chains converged. Sparks shot through his hands, but the dragon didn't flinch. Instead, it hummed in resonance. The energy pulsed, flickered, and then dimmed slightly. "Good," Elias whispered. "We're close." The mercenaries were relentless. More appeared at the ridge, weapons glowing, shouting orders. One fired a blast that missed the dragon by inches, striking a chunk of cliff that sent shards flying toward Elias. He rolled, hitting the dragon's back hard, and felt a pang of fear as the dragon twisted, testing him. But he held firm. The creature's trust was growing. It understood that he was not the enemy. The dragon flexed its wings again, lifting slightly. Rain and wind tore at them, but its hum became stronger, almost like a heartbeat in sync with Elias's own. A small micro-payoff. The chains dimmed further, responding to the combination of human will and dragon resonance. Elias's eyes sparkled with hope. For the first time, the impossible felt achievable. Then the cliff cracked beneath them. A jagged line split through the stone, sending dust and small rocks tumbling. The dragon's claws slid, scraping the surface, and Elias had to shift his weight instantly to avoid falling. The mercenaries shouted, their voices distant and distorted by the storm. Lightning struck directly behind the dragon, illuminating its wings fully extended for a heartbeat, even though it wasn't flying yet. The sight was breathtaking, terrifying, impossible. Elias knew they had seconds. The dragon could not hold against the storm forever, and the mercenaries would not stop. He gritted his teeth and leaned close to the dragon's neck. "We either fly or fall," he said almost to himself. The dragon's eyes met his, a silent understanding passing between them. It flexed its wings once more. One wing beat, small but deliberate, sent them sliding slightly upward, off the fractured cliff edge. A roar of wind, a flash of lightning, a chain of sparks from the dying chains, and then silence. Just for a moment. Elias held his breath, heart pounding. The dragon had moved. Not far, not free, but alive, testing its own strength. He felt the tiniest victory pulse through him. But the mercenaries weren't done. One of them fired a high-powered shot that struck a nearby outcrop. It exploded into a shower of rocks and debris, sending a jagged shard directly toward the dragon's wing. Elias raised his arm instinctively, bracing for impact. Time slowed. The shard bounced off harmlessly, but the cliff beneath them quivered ominously. Elias's stomach sank. They had survived the first assault, but the storm, the chains, the mercenaries, and the dragon's own centuries of pain meant that the next move could be the last. Elias leaned closer to the dragon's glowing neck and whispered, "We have to move now, or we both die." The dragon's hum shifted, curious, tense, ready. And then, with a shuddering breath, it flexed its wings fully, sending a shockwave of wind and rain across the cliff. Elias held on tight. They were on the edge of something impossible. Something that could either save them, or destroy them. The storm howled around them, but Elias could feel a change in the air. The dragon's wings lifted, pushing against the wind with growing strength. Each beat sent torrents of rain sideways, but it was no longer fighting, it was testing itself. Elias held on tight, heart hammering. He knew they were close to something big, though he didn't yet understand what. The cliff beneath them shivered. Lightning illuminated a jagged opening in the rock wall nearby. Elias squinted. He had not noticed it before, the cave entrance half hidden by centuries of moss and rain. And something inside it glowed faintly, greenish, almost like the chains that had bound the dragon. "Hang on," he shouted to the dragon. "We need to check that." The dragon hesitated, ears twitching. It had survived the storm this far, but trust was still fragile. Elias whispered gently, pressing his hand against its scales. The creature trembled at first, then leaned toward him. He took a deep breath and nudged it closer. The entrance was narrow, jagged, but they slipped inside. The cave walls were slick with rainwater and covered in strange alien markings. The glow came from a crystalline structure embedded in the back wall. Its surface shimmered, pulsing in rhythm with the faint hum the dragon had been making since the storm began. Elias's eyes widened. This was it. This had to be the key. The dragon had been grounded not by injury or weakness, but by something in this cave. Some ancient mechanism waiting. He stepped closer, careful not to startle the dragon. The crystal pulsed stronger as he approached. It reacted to the dragon's hum, and surprisingly to him too. "I think it wants both of us," he said aloud, though the words felt strange in the echoing cave. "It wants us to work together." He reached out and touched the crystal. Electricity shot through his fingers, making him jerk back. The dragon roared, not in anger but in pain and frustration. Its wings beat frantically, knocking rocks loose. Elias grabbed a loose ledge, bracing himself. The chain's glow inside the dragon dimmed as he held onto the crystal. A spark of hope ignited in him. Maybe this could work. Maybe they could free the dragon. But the mercenaries were not far behind. Shouts echoed through the storm, growing louder as they approached the cave. Elias's stomach tightened. They had survived the climb, the storm, and the first attack, but now the true test began. He glanced at the dragon. Its eyes met his, filled with something almost human. Fear, hope, frustration. Elias swallowed hard. He had to make a decision. The chains were weakening. The mechanism in the crystal could free the dragon, but it could also kill them both if done wrong. There was no time to hesitate. "Trust me," Elias said, pressing the crystal against the dragon's chest where the glowing chains converged. Sparks leapt across the scales, but the dragon didn't flinch. Instead, it hummed louder, the vibration echoing through the cave. The crystal's light grew intense, casting strange shadows on the walls. Elias felt the energy course through him. For a heartbeat it was terrifying, then exhilarating. The dragon arched its back, wings flexing with a strength Elias hadn't seen before. The chains began to break, fragmenting into sparks that rained onto the cave floor. Elias gritted his teeth, pushing the crystal harder against the dragon's scales. Sweat and rain mixed on his face, and he realized the hum he felt wasn't just the dragon, it was them combined. Human will, dragon power, and the crystal's energy, all in one. A sudden shout from the mercenaries jolted him. One fired a plasma shot that grazed the cave wall. Sparks flew. Elias grabbed a loose rock and swung it at a control panel built into the cave wall, smashing it. A pulse of energy shot through the crystal. The dragon flinched, then recoiled, wings folding slightly, but the chains were cracking. Small pieces fell away, sizzling against the wet cave floor. Elias whispered encouragement. "You're doing it. You can do it." The dragon's hum changed, rising in pitch, almost musical. Its wings flexed fully, lifting off the ground just inches at first, then higher. Elias's heart raced. For 3,000 years this creature had not flown. Not once. And now, inches off the ground, it had begun. Then the cave quaked violently. A rockfall from the ceiling sent debris tumbling toward them. Elias ducked, grabbed the dragon's claw, and held on as the creature twisted instinctively, knocking some of the rubble aside. One shard fell, striking the crystal. Sparks shot everywhere. Elias's stomach dropped. He thought it was over. But the dragon reacted differently this time. It flexed its wings with power, absorbing the shock, steadying them both. "Good, yes." Elias yelled, adrenaline flooding him. He pressed closer to the crystal again, feeling the energy flow through him. The chains on the dragon shattered completely. A burst of light shot outward, illuminating the cave, the storm outside, and the mercenaries rushing closer. The dragon lifted fully, wings extended in all their majesty. Rain poured off its scales. Its roar echoed, a sound of freedom, of centuries of restraint finally broken. Elias held on tightly, laughing through the chaos, heart pounding. They had done it, almost. Then, just as they prepared to push for the cave exit, the ground beneath them cracked. The mercenaries' energy blasts hit the cliff outside, sending shockwaves through the rock. The cave floor tilted, a boulder sliding toward them. Elias grabbed the dragon's neck, shouting, "Hold on!" The dragon flexed its wings harder than ever. Sparks flew. Rain and wind roared. And just as the boulder hit the floor, the dragon leaped upward, wings slicing through the storm. Elias clung, nearly thrown off, adrenaline making every nerve scream. They shot out of the cave, up toward the storm-lashed cliff edge. For a moment the world was chaos, lightning, rain, and a dragon beginning to remember flight. Elias's heart pounded in his chest as he realized something terrifying and thrilling. The dragon could fly. But they were not safe yet. The mercenaries were still there, the storm still raged, and above all, Elias had no idea how far this dragon's power went, or what it could do once fully awake. A glowing shimmer on the dragon's chest hinted at secrets still hidden. Elias's eyes widened. Whatever had grounded this creature for 3,000 years was only the beginning. And then from somewhere deep in the storm, a new sound rose, a low, haunting hum like a warning, or a summons. The wind tore at Elias's clothes as he clung to the dragon's broad back. Rain pelted his face, lightning split the sky, and the roar of the storm was deafening. Below, jagged cliffs and the abyss waited for a single mistake. Above, the clouds boiled and crackled, alive with energy. And the mercenaries were not giving up. One of them fired a plasma blast that slammed against the dragon's wing. Sparks and lightning danced as the creature roared, twisting in midair. Elias's stomach lurched. He gritted his teeth, gripping the ridged scales along its neck. "Hold steady. We're almost through this," he shouted, voice barely audible over the storm. The dragon's wings flapped harder, stronger than anything Elias had imagined. Rain slid off its scales like molten metal. It wasn't just flapping, it was fighting for freedom, for the centuries it had been grounded, for the strange bond it now felt with a human who refused to give up. Elias's heart swelled with awe and fear. A sharp, bright flash lit the sky. One of the mercenaries had launched a high-powered missile. Elias's stomach dropped. It screamed toward them, leaving a glowing trail. He braced against the dragon's neck. The creature roared, wings flexing furiously, generating a blast of wind that threw the missile off course by inches. But inches were not enough. The cliff edge loomed closer, jagged and cruel. Elias realized the only chance was to take the dragon higher, out of range. He leaned forward, whispering encouragement. "Now. Push. Higher." The dragon responded, muscles tensing, wings snapping through the storm. Gusts of wind bent trees and sent rocks tumbling below. Lightning flashed again, illuminating the dragon's massive, scarred wings fully extended. They were perfect now, no longer broken by chains or time. The mercenaries opened fire again. Elias ducked instinctively as a plasma bolt grazed the dragon's tail, sparking off its scales. The beast's hum vibrated through him, resonating with the crystal mechanism still faintly embedded in its chest. Elias pressed his hand to the scales, feeling the energy, feeling the creature's fear and determination. He realized then that the dragon was listening to him, responding to human will combined with its own. Together they were unstoppable, or they would die trying. Another missile screamed toward them, faster this time. Elias counted seconds in his head. The dragon's wings flapped once, then twice, then in a powerful rhythm that lifted them higher than the cliff edge. The missile struck the rock face below with a deafening explosion, showering debris upward. Rain and sparks filled the air. Elias gasped, heart racing. They were alive. But the storm was not done. A bolt of lightning struck nearby, sending arcs of electricity dancing through the air. The dragon twisted instinctively, flapping into the blast, and Elias felt the full force of the wind throw him against its back. Pain shot through his side. He gritted his teeth and held on, refusing to let go. The dragon roared, lifting higher, wings cutting through the wind. Elias's stomach churned as the abyss yawned below. His mind raced. This was the moment of truth. They either survived, or centuries of the dragon's life would end here. He whispered again, feeling the vibration of trust between them. We can do this, together. The mercenaries fired again, but their shots were wild now, uncoordinated. They hadn't counted on the storm's force, the dragon's instinct, or the bond between Elias and the creature. Elias grabbed a loose crystal shard from the cave that had fallen earlier, holding it up as a focus. Sparks shot from it, striking the next incoming blast and redirecting it away from the dragon. Small, clever victories counted. The dragon flexed its wings fully, and for the first time, it was airborne by its own power. Elias's grip tightened, heart racing. They soared above the cliff edge, above the storm itself. Rain whipped past them, lightning cracked the sky, but the dragon held steady. Its wings pulsed with power, its roar echoing across the mountains like a declaration. They were alive. They were free. Then Elias noticed the mercenaries scrambling below. One had launched a final missile, aimed directly at them. He shouted, "Now trust me." The dragon tilted, banking hard, wings slicing through the storm, pulling upward just as the missile exploded behind them. The shockwave hit the cliffside, sending stones tumbling. Elias held on, laughing and shouting with exhilaration. The storm began to break slightly, though rain still poured. Clouds parted in shards of gray and lightning-lit brilliance. The dragon's wings beat steadily now, no longer thrashing. It circled high above the cliff, fully airborne. Elias looked down at the mercenaries, defeated and helpless below. A surge of pride and awe washed over him. He had risked everything, and together they had done the impossible. But the moment of triumph brought a new realization. The crystal in the dragon's chest glowed faintly, pulsing in a rhythm that didn't match the storm. Elias leaned closer, feeling the resonance. This was not the end. Something bigger, older, and far more mysterious was still out there. The dragon's hum hinted at secrets beyond his understanding, secrets that had kept it grounded for 3,000 years. Elias whispered, breathless, "This is just the beginning." The dragon tilted its massive wings and hovered above the storm. For a heartbeat, everything was quiet, alive only with the sound of wind and the creature's pulse. Then the glow in its chest flared suddenly, bright enough to illuminate the storm clouds around them, and Elias realized. The chains had been broken, yes, but the mechanism they had triggered was part of something far greater. A low, haunting hum rose from deep within the dragon, not just a sound but a call. Elias stiffened, sensing the warning. This hum wasn't just a signal, it was a summons. Something ancient, something powerful was responding. The sky seemed to ripple, and for a moment, it felt as though the entire storm was alive. Elias clung to the dragon, heart pounding, adrenaline surging. The dragon flexed its wings, preparing to rise even higher. They had survived the impossible. They had flown. But now both of them knew that something even greater awaited them, something they could not yet see, something that would test their courage, their bond, and everything they had just risked. And from somewhere beyond the storm, a faint, shimmering light pulsed, like the heartbeat of the galaxy itself. The storm was fading, but the wind still tore across the cliff tops. Rain slid off the dragon's scales like liquid silver, sparkling under the first pale light breaking through the clouds. Elias clung to the creature's back, muscles aching, lungs burning, but his heart soared. For the first time in 3,000 years, the dragon was truly free. It flexed its wings, testing the air with smooth, deliberate strokes. Elias felt the power beneath him, the raw strength that centuries of grounding had only dulled. Now it was awake, alive, unstoppable. His hands ran along the ridged scales, feeling warmth and energy, the pulse of life and freedom. "You did it," he whispered, voice trembling. "You're flying. You're really flying." The dragon tilted its head, a rumbling hum vibrating in its chest. It had understood every word. Elias had learned that this creature was more than alien. It was intelligent, aware, capable of choice. And it had chosen him. Below, the mercenaries lay defeated, their weapons scattered, their morale shattered. Elias glanced down briefly, feeling no triumph in their failure. Only relief. The dragon's roar, deep and resonant, echoed across the mountains, a sound of victory and justice. Elias slid off the dragon's back carefully, standing on a flat outcrop. Rainwater ran down his face, mixing with mud and sweat. He looked up at the creature, now circling above him, wings cutting the air with breathtaking precision. He felt awe, not fear. He felt pride, not doubt. "You're free," he said again, louder this time. "No one can hold you anymore." The dragon dipped lower, wings folding slightly, then stretched them wide again. Its hum grew melodic, almost joyous, echoing through the valleys. Elias realized the full truth. The dragon's flight wasn't just a physical act. It was a moment of rebirth. 3,000 years of fear, chains, and grounding ended because of a single human who refused to give up. He remembered the cave, the crystal, the shards, and the storm. Every risk, every second of danger had led to this. He had faced impossible odds, yet courage, quick thinking, and compassion had turned the impossible into reality. Humans could be small, fragile, mortal, but they could also be extraordinary. A warm glow pulsed from the dragon's chest. The crystal mechanism was gone, but its energy remained, integrated into the creature's body. Elias stepped closer, mesmerized. He realized this energy was more than just chains. It was a key, a link to something older, larger, and unknown. The dragon flexed its wings, then nudged him gently with its snout, a silent thank you, a recognition of their bond. "You trust me," he said softly. The dragon hummed in response, and Elias laughed, the sound mingling with the wind and the fading rain. He had never expected to feel this alive, this connected. 3,000 years of solitude and despair had ended because a human believed. The dragon swooped down, circling lower, inviting him to climb back. Elias hesitated, heart pounding. Then he remembered the exhilaration, the fear, the triumph, and he leapt, catching the dragon's back again. Together they rose, slicing through clouds, rising above the cliffs and mountains, leaving the mercenaries behind. From this height the world looked different. Rivers glinted, forests stretched endlessly, and the mountains rose like guardians of the past. Elias felt small yet limitless. He realized that courage was not the absence of fear, it was the determination to act despite it. He had acted and it had changed everything. The dragon's wings beat steadily, carrying them higher. Elias felt the hum of the creature beneath him, a steady rhythm that synced with his own heartbeat. They were partners now. He could feel the intelligence in its movements, the strategy in its flight, the emotion in every beat of its wings. Then, far beyond the mountains, a shimmer caught Elias's eye. A strange, rippling light, faint but distinct, pulsed across the horizon. He squinted. The dragon tilted its head toward it, ears twitching. The glow was not part of the storm, not part of the mountains. It was something else. Something waiting. Elias felt a thrill, and a shiver. Whatever had kept this creature grounded for millennia was only a piece of the story. The crystal, the storm, the chains, they were part of something older, larger, and far more mysterious. His mind raced. Could other creatures, other ancient powers be out there? Was this dragon only the beginning? He looked down at the dragon, its wings cutting the air with flawless power. "We've done the impossible," he said, voice steady now. "But maybe, there's more out there. Something bigger." The dragon responded with a deep, melodic hum, as if acknowledging the truth. Elias felt a surge of determination. Whatever mysteries awaited, he knew one thing: humans could rise to meet them. Courage, intelligence, and compassion were not weaknesses, they were tools. They had saved a dragon today. They could face anything tomorrow. As the dragon lifted them higher into the sky, leaving the storm and cliffs behind, Elias allowed himself a moment of awe. The wind tore past, the world stretched endlessly below, and the bond between human and dragon felt unbreakable. He had faced death, chaos, and centuries of despair, and had emerged victorious. but that shimmer on the horizon pulsed again. Brighter. Closer. And in that moment, Elias understood that their story was only beginning. The galaxy held secrets, challenges, and ancient powers waiting for those brave enough to act. The dragon's wings sliced the clouds once more. Elias held tight, eyes on the distant glow, heart racing, ready for whatever came next. Together they were unstoppable. The first flight was won, but the next adventure loomed bigger, stranger, and more dangerous than anything either had faced before. And somewhere beyond the shimmer, the universe seemed to hum back.